Hello everyone, Cutting Tool Designer here. Welcome to part 24 of the restoration of the South Bend Heavy 10 lathe. Today we will have the final of the three-part episode of putting the apron back together. And it won't be without its interesting things that we run into. So stay tuned and we'll finish putting this baby back together, so everybody can see how the rest of the assembly goes. And from there, we'll move on to something else. Alright, so hang on one second, and we'll start over where we left off. Now we can put in the... Now we can put these in. Put them into the slots. And this piece goes back on again. These screws go back in. Like so. And we're just going to do them just slightly snug for now. Okay. Alright, so there's the better part of the assembly done. After the half nuts in, then got to put another wick in. Up in that same top area. Need to tie another wick in here to go up through here. So once again, need to feed a wick through here. Not quite as easy. Since I have this other one in here. Feed it back the other way. Gonna be a pain. Looks like I got a lot of editing to do with this video. That's no fun. Okay, well, we'll get to it here in a second. Shut you guys off. Okay, well, we had to put another wick up in here under this shaft, and another slip knot. So we'll get that pulled down in. Without ripping the wick. And then it has to slide through this hole, because it's going to feed this shaft and this bearing here. so that comes through. And that let's see, it actually has to go through. Okay, now we got the wick. This is kind of a tricky thing to do. What we need to do is take this wick, feed it through this gear, and again the small gear goes to the back towards the front of the apron. Then we got to feed it through the front hole. Set it down in here. Feed it through the front hole. Alright. Well, here's the shaft. It has a slot in it, and that's where the wick's supposed to go. But it comes to the back side. This groove in here is for this pin to locate and hold the gear in place. Okay, so that goes in after we get the shaft in place. So let's go ahead and put some oil on this. Now what we got to do is try and get this wick into that slot as we start feeding this in. And it has to come in from the front and pull on the wick as we get it through onto the gear. And slowly work the gear on. Now the other thing we got to be careful of, try not to go too far with it. Tap that back out a little bit. Is the wick then has to go to the top of the shaft when we get it in here. So we got to pull up on this wick. So we can get a hold of it. So pull up on this wick as we push the shaft through. I'm trying to make sure we have enough pulled through because we got to trim it off before it goes through the rest of the way. This shaft is a non-rotating shaft. The gear will rotate on it. So I got to get this so that it stays to the top of the shaft and has enough. Pulled it all out. Try it again. So I want to have enough wick so it rides to the top, but not excessive amounts. So I want to make sure I pull enough through. I'm going to put this in here just to try and guide it a little bit. Take it a little bit more. Make sure there's still enough there to clear the shaft. Okay, and then I got to trim it off. We have to trim it off here now. So with the knife, not exactly the cleanest trim job. Okay, put a little bit of oil on it. Now we got to work this through the rest of the way, keeping this wick on top of that shaft, which it's too far. I need to get in here and hold it up again. So get underneath it here, pull it towards the side. Okay. So it's probably more than what it needs to be. I'll pull it back through. Now, fun part is, now we got to line up this slot for this pin to go in. Okay, so there it is there. Okay. And then we got to take this pin and tap it into place. So I want to get it started. Alright, and then drive it in the rest of the way. Wants to turn on you. They say to put a piece of wood in there. Let's see. Piece of wood to jam against the gear so it doesn't rotate. Tap this in. Can't remember how far it has to go. See, okay, it's protruding a little bit on the other side. Could probably go a little bit further. Okay, pin's sticking out both sides a little bit, so that should be good. Wick is over the shaft. Alright. And in front of the gear. Now, I'm supposed to be using a filler gauge. Not sure why that's not moving any further. Because you're supposed to use a 10,000th feeler gauge, which there's a big gap in there. I'm going to say a 10,000th feeler gauge on the gear in front of it here. Let me double check what they say there. Place 10,000th feeler gauge between the gear faces. Yes, correct. Between the gear faces. So there has to be some gear lash or clearance here between those two gears. And this one. So I'm going to slide that in there. Now this is where we'll tighten down this little set screw right here. And then that's going to lock the shaft into place. Let me get a little bigger screwdriver. So now the set screw has to tighten down on the shaft. And then that sets the clearance lash. Between the gears. Okay, well, that's the gear in. Seems to be freely spinning pretty good. Next step is to put the hand wheel mechanism in so that you can drive it. It'll interlink with this gear to drive this gear, which then drives the rack on the saddle. So that's nice snug fit with the wick in there, so that's good. So what we do next is we have this gear, and this is the long shaft, and it has the pin through it for driving in the taper pin. There's also a little ring. There's a groove around the gear for holding a retainer so that this doesn't slide in too far, and it rides then on the side of this gear. So we need to put a wick in there. Normally that wick Normally that wick would need tied off down in here, but since we're putting the oiler in, we'll move this around. So since we're going to put an oiler in here, we only really need the wick to be in there, and it's the wrong size. Let's see, this one's probably long enough, and that's a round one. Just trying to see what I have left for wick material. That actually might be long enough. And let's see, yep, that should be long enough. No sense wasting any more than you have to. And I'll put this one back over with the rest of them. So what we're going to do is trying to work this wick in to just a groove in here. And this will probably be fun. Yes, we got to get it on top of that groove. Sorry if I'm getting in the way here. So I want to put this in so where it pretty much comes to the back side, and I'll show you here once we get this baby in here. And about the length of that slot. Okay, I'm going to try and work some of it in there, and we'll have to be careful when we go to put the shaft in so that it doesn't, and that's the other thing, it's probably going to want to push that wick out. So here we are, we have the wick basically in the slot, and I'm pushing it in there as much as we can. And now we'll take the shaft, put a little bit of oil on it so it goes in. Okay, so here comes the tricky part. I'm going to try and get this in without pushing that wick on through. And that's exactly what it did. So everybody can see how much fun this is. Might have to pull it through enough to get that started. Trying to find something maybe I can get a finger hole on that wick with so I can get the shaft inserted. I'm looking for something. Know what I'm looking for, can't find it. Here we go. Here's my scribe, my Randy Richards in the Shop scribe, and see if I can get that to kind of use the point to hold that wick into the groove above the shaft. As long as I can hold on to some material. Try and work that in there. Slowly work it down. Hopefully it stays, the wick stays in there. And it looks like we bunched up most of the wick. Still shows some down in here, but not enough. Alright, we're going to try this again. Maybe what we'll do is we'll put some oil on the wick. Now that usually swells it up, so it doesn't necessarily make sure it works as well. So I'm going to have to leave a little bit more sticking out, I think, at the back end, and see if we can get that to have enough to hold on to without having too much behind the gear or the rack, which shouldn't be a problem. It should be open. because this is going to mesh with that gear. I don't think it bottoms out completely. So now I got some wick there. Try and turn it so it comes through. I think we got it that time. Still have wick down in there. Get this down in the mesh with the gear. All right. So there we are. Oop, pushed it through. Don't do that again. Hold on to it. All right, so there we have that gear pushed in up to that ring. And there'll be a little slop in here after the handle gets on because it's not completely, there's a little bit of slop at the end. Okay, so we got the wick in there. I'm going to go ahead and trim off the excess. Okay. Now we can put our handle on. Our nice polished and shiny handle. Now we got to find the big end of the pin. It's a tapered pin. So that's the big end. Let's see what we got here. That looks like the little end. Yep, that's the big end. So now we're going to hold on to that gear and we slide this in. Kind of line up the hole. Looks like it needs to go back out further. Maybe there isn't a slop in there. There we go. Got the pin started. And tap that on home. Okay, so there we go. There's the handle. Looking good. Turns the gears real nice. Alright. Looks like fun. Just put a little bit of oil down in here. Let it soak into that wick. Okay. Yeah, there's really not any slop in there. I thought there was when I took it apart, but seems to be pretty good now. Okay, so now we got the handle on. And last but not least, we're going to come back to the clutch assembly. Now I'm going to undo this so we can assemble this clutch handle. Lay down on it so it doesn't fall through. So here we have the clutch handle. This pin has to drive back through. We probably don't have you in the shot there. Let's see if we can get you orientated a little differently here. Okay. So this pin is basically a stop. Where this set screw's at, so we get the right one. Yeah, okay. It has to slide in here, and your tensioning is going to happen right there, where you get to hold the set screw. So we're gonna go ahead and drive this pin in. Okay, to the other side. Let's give it just a little bit more. Got it recessed. Okay. And this pin has to be pounded in, so we got to make sure we get our orientation right. So we're going to slide this in like this. Again, you have to be in the orientation that this set screw. Because once this gets assembled, it's going to tighten up on that thread. Make sure it's below the surface. Okay. Now we got to get this pin started. And we're going to put a little bit of oil right in here. because that has to rotate on that pin. Stays flush in here. So trying to line this. Okay, so it's through now. Get it lined up with the hole inside. Okay. Alright, so now we're in here. Finished driving it home. And there we go. Probably use just a tad more to balance it out a little bit. Maybe a little too much. Alright, so there we go. Mechanism's now together. Pin there, of course, stops it so it doesn't drop down too far. So now what we got to do is screw this back on, like so. It's a little tight because that set screws. Loosen that set screw up a little bit. See if we can get this to tighten up. No, that's not right. It's going in crooked. That's not good. Okay, that's what you don't want to do. You want to cross the threads, which I just did. Alright, let me get this fixed and get it in the right position. Probably have to chase those threads a little bit. And I'll be back at you and show you how to do it the right way. Be back in a minute. Alright, we're back. Luckily I actually had a tap with the right threads that I could chase that out again because I kind of boogered them a little bit. So let's try this one more time. Now, probably should put this on before you put the handle on because you can't quite get it to turn on there right. So that being said, we will try this one more time. Being very careful how we're threading this on to make sure we don't get it on crooked again. And here we go. And of course you gotta turn it on the threads far enough that you can get an engagement. Okay, and that may or may not be far enough. Might have to do some fine adjustment once we get. I'm trying to hold on to the shaft so it doesn't. Okay, that's pretty tight. Seems to lock it. Can't pull up on it far enough, so I might have got it a little bit too far. Alright, so let's turn this back, bring it back half a turn. I think that's about a good area. So let's see if we can lock it in here at this spot. Try and get it to lock in on that those threads on that shaft then. Tighten this nut down, or screw down. Seems to be pretty tight. Now, this little screw, get another smaller size wrench. Should lock in that bushing in that spot. I'm not going to over tighten it right now. And then of course there's a lock nut here. Let's see what size it is. See, it's probably bigger than 5/16. I really can't get into it very well. It must be 3/8. I don't have my 3/8 with me at the moment. So what we will do is we will finish tightening that up later. Okay, so we'll get those fine adjustments later on. Alright, we'll put our handle back on. Get our pin to line up again. Must not be on the right side. There we go. Again, some of the stuff I have to disassemble a little bit more or take it apart. Alright. So there we are. You see this gear turning here? That's driving the gear that runs it across the shaft. This then locks in cross feed. So the worm gear turns. Just turn that one, and then this drives the main worm or lead screw with the drive mechanism. So that's neutral, and then of course our half nut lever is there. So clutch engagement, disengagement, and the only thing left, which we really won't do, is there's a gasket for the cover. That goes on here. And that will go on last after you put the gasket on. Actually, let me just grab the gasket. Because I'll probably want to use some RTV sealer or something when we go to do that. So this gasket will go on like so, and then the gear cover goes on like so. Got plenty of clearance there, Brad. Not hitting the clutch gear with the gasket on. Okay, so that would be the final step in reassembling the apron. So we got our clutch assembly in, got our gears in, got the half nut in, got the locking mechanism in, got the worm gear. Now the worm gear assembly I'm going to be taking back out because I need to do some work on it to take out some of the lash. So I'll have to take the half nut back off in order to get that out. This is the main thing that we're going to work on. Everything else is pretty well done. So if we want, I'll see if you want to see me put this back in after we made some changes to it. Other than that, that's it. And there you go. Knocking over oil again. So there you are. Finished half nut, or yeah, finished half nut. We have finished the reassembling of the apron. finally. Been a little bit of work. Sorry it took 3 episodes to do. But again, it's nice to see some cases where you have difficult areas in the assembly, disassembly. So even though the video is a bit on the long side, I think it's worthwhile for you to see the easy stuff and the hard stuff. Okay, with that, we'll call it a wrap for this, other than the only other things that will be left to do while we're at it is there's the plug that has to go on the bottom, just a pipe thread. This is going to have to be pressed in. This oiler will have to be pressed in, and then I need to get another oiler, buy an oiler to assemble here. So that'll be it then. Hang on 1 second. Alright everyone, well that wraps up the assembly of the apron. Thanks everybody for standing by and watching through all this. As you can see, it can be a bit frustrating, but I'm glad we were able to show some of that. So those of you out there that are looking to do this or have one that you're working on, at least you can kind of see where some of the not so fun areas are at. And I hope I gave enough description and showed enough information on how we put it back together. So with that being said, again, appreciate all my subscribers, appreciate all those that are watching, and if you like what you're seeing so far, again, we're going to continue on to this thing's up and running and we make some chips. So not sure where we're going to end up, but we're just going to keep on going. So that's it for episode 24. Stay tuned for episode 25, where I'm pretty certain we're going to start on the headstock, and that's going to take a little bit of work too. There's a press gear in the back that's different than a lot of them, and this particular one, so it's not going to be exactly easy and clean to get a hold of to pull it off. So we'll discuss that when we get to it. So appreciate everyone watching, and don't forget, in just a few weeks will be the Bar Z Summer Bash out at Rancho Cucamonga in California at Stan Zinkowski's place. This will be the 3rd year of YouTube creators, and I believe there's going to be about 30 there this year. And I have, at this point, I have tentative approval to go, so I still have to do some logistics and work out the travel arrangements. Got some other business to take care of out there in the area to make it all work. So keep your fingers crossed, and those that are watching, maybe I'll get to see you out there at the bash. Alright everyone, again, thanks for everything. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time. Until then, everybody out there, take care.